Next up in our run through the Atlantic Division, the Ottawa Senators. Is Dylan Cozens going to take a big step forward this year? I'll tell you why I'm not so confident that is on the way for Ottawa and Cozens. That's coming up here on the Locked On Sabres podcast.
You're Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody, and welcome into today's episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast here on a beautiful Wednesday. I don't know why I said it's beautiful. It's actually raining out here in Buffalo. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, if you would like to become a part of our Locked On Sabres text club, you can sign up for that by heading over to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSabres. And if you would like to watch the show, you could do that. We are available on YouTube. You type in Locked On Sabres, you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and you can watch along. You can throw a comment in our way if you want, if you're not already in the text club. Lot to get to on today's show. No, we are not going to talk about the roof leaking at KeyBank Center. The jokes are being made about that, and I think it's nice to have your fun with that, and I'm doing that as well. Although I will say it's not even the roof. We learned that, if you haven't seen this, by the way, the water pouring through the ceiling at a concert last night at KeyBank Center, and it didn't, I guess, end up being a roof problem or whatever. It ended up being a sprinkler, a faulty sprinkler that wasn't working, or I should say like a break in that water line or whatever. Showing that right now to our YouTube watchers if you are inclined to see it. But it wasn't necessarily the brand new roof, which is what I thought it was upon seeing the video, and I'm sure most people thought that as well. But no, not the new roof. But I'm certainly having fun with that again. We're not going to talk about that. It's hopefully going to be fixed by the time the season starts. I can't imagine it's not. Hopefully you stay dry if you were at the thing and didn't dump on you. So anyways, we're going to talk about the Senators today. We've already, if you've missed it and you want breakdowns on the other teams in the Sabres division, we've already gone through Boston. We've already gone through Detroit. We've already gone through Montreal. Today on the show, we're going to talk about Ottawa, which is a team that I think was much more in the Sabres' hair, and they were competing and pushing and pulling to try to, break through and end their playoff droughts. Ottawa was like half the time that the Sabres was, but the Senators are the ones that have pushed through here, and they have made it all the way to the Stanley Cup playoffs. They did not win a round last year. They lose in round one to Toronto, but they break their playoff drought, and now I think they're looking like a perennial playoff team. I'll explain why I think that. And, they kind of had a quiet offseason. I think Dylan Cozens really ends up being their big offseason move, even though he played 21 games for them at the end of last season, not including the playoffs. Got some numbers on Cozens that I want to get to, and why I am not confident that Dylan Cozens is fixed, change of scenery, solve the issue. There's some workout pictures of Cozens. The body type has changed for him from one year to the next, and I am not betting on him being any different than he was with the Sabres in those final two seasons where he looked lost. And I've got some numbers to back that up coming up on today's episode. So let's get into Ottawa, though, and look back on last season, look ahead to this season. I've got their over-under for you, their offseason moves, and got the whole lot of it coming up today here on Locked On Sabres. So let's start with the season that Ottawa just had. They make the playoffs. They finish with a record of 45, 30, and 7. That was 97 points. They make the postseason. That was their best total in a long time since Erik Karlsson was there, and they made it to the Eastern Conference Final and actually came very close to making to the Stanley Cup Final. That was a very, very good season for Ottawa. By the way, not to take a victory lap, because what do I want Ottawa to make the playoffs for? I hate Ottawa. But I did predict they would make the postseason. I thought that was going to happen. I thought that was a very talented team, an up-and-coming young team that was willing to take shots, that was willing to surround their young pieces with veterans. Ottawa has been the team in the last 3 years that I wish the Sabres were. And that's not to hold them up as some gold standard. They are not winning the Stanley Cup. They are not winning playoff rounds. They've so far made the playoffs one time. So it's not necessarily the highest standard, but they absolutely have acted in a way that I would want the Sabres to act as a team that has missed the playoffs 14 years in a row, which is recognize that you have a good young nucleus of players and surround them with veterans. Take swings, trade your first round pick, go out and get a goaltender, which to me is the most important thing they did by far. And guess what? Not all of them are going to work. They're kind of batting 500 on those swings. They traded a top 10 pick to get Alex DeBrincat from Chicago. And guess what? After 1 year, he wanted out. He left. And you had to dump him for less than you had traded for him in the first place, even though you did still get something. The acquisition of Jacob Chikrin, they took a shot there. This player I wanted the Sabres to get. They might have tried. And Ottawa got that done. Guess what? Didn't work. He goes to Washington. But they signed Claude Giroux in free agency. And guess what? Helpful player to them. Last season, got Selke votes, 50-point season at 37 years old, playing 18 minutes a night in the top 6. They went out and got a guy like that, and that was in part benefit. It was easier for them because he's from that area, but they went out and got an aged player past his prime because they thought he would help them, and he has. And then, by far, the best thing Ottawa has done that has propelled them way above where the Buffalo Sabres are right now is they went out and they got the goalie the Sabres should have never let get away from them. I was saying it at the time. There was no reason the Sabres couldn't offer Linus Ullmark $2 million more than anybody else in the league was offering them, given that they were going to be at the cap floor anyway and needed a goaltender. They went out and got Linus Ullmark. What a signing by Ottawa. It was the perfect trade to go get Ullmark. They did, again, they traded a first for DeBrincat. They traded the stuff for Chikrin. They traded a first for a goaltender in Linus Ullmark, a move the Sabres have needed to make sense. Ullmark walked away. And last year, you look at the statistical categories and what Ottawa was good at, and they weren't bad at anything. It's kind of the funny thing about Ottawa. They weren't really bad at anything. They were great at one thing, and that was goaltending. They got saves. 7th in the league in save percentage. Linus Ullmark, honestly, I think has to now be considered one of the best goalies in the National Hockey League. We can talk about how good he is in the playoffs, and he gets some criticism for not showing up in the postseason as much as he does in the regular season. Last year for Ottawa, this past season, he does allow 18 goals in 6 games. Not strong at all against a very offensive Toronto team, but whatever. But a .909 save percentage in the regular season. And now, in the last 3 years, this does include his 2 seasons previously in Boston and also last year in Ottawa. In the last 3 seasons, there have been 47 goaltenders that have started or have played at least 82 games. 47 goalies that have played at least 82 games. And the number of goalies that has a better goals saved above expected than Linus Ullmark in that amount of time, 1. 1 out of 47 better than Ullmark, and it's Connor Hellebuck. That is the only guy. They're actually, it's funny, when you look at those numbers, Hellebuck by himself in a tier of his own at number 1, Ullmark kind of in a tier of his own at number 2, and then another drop-off before you get to Ilya Sorokin, Igor Shesterkin, Andrei Vasilevsky is actually another tier below that even. But Ullmark has been phenomenal, and you can argue, and again, by those numbers, and to me, this is what I've seen from him, especially in Ottawa, where he faced some more danger than he did in Boston. He is one of the best goalies in the league. He's athletic. He is amazing moving side to side. He has done a better job in recent years since he left the Sabres at staying healthy, which was a problem for him. He's really just got to figure out the playoffs now. But Ullmark was the big swing, that last piece of the puzzle that they really needed. And they got it done, and I think it's the biggest reason why they made the playoffs last year. By the way, last year even, he missed a few games. Anton Forsberg came in, did fine, wasn't phenomenal, but Ullmark is the biggest reason I think they made it last year. Otherwise, they did have some young players take some steps forward, or at least maintain what they had been doing. Tim Stuzle is a number one line player, almost a point a game player last season. Drake Batherson is a very good player, 26 goals and 68 points last year. Dynamic, offensive, and he's into the prime of his career now. So those two at the top offensively, Brady Tkachuk, of course, who dealt with some injuries, but is a great player that everybody wants to trade for all the time, right? And then I think another key for Ottawa is the steps that Jake Sanderson has taken forward as a great defenseman. I mean, watching him at the Four Nations tournament, he was very strong for Team USA. And this was his best year in Ottawa for sure. First time he received Norris votes, he finished 10th in the Norris voting on the season, almost 25 minutes a night, 57 points, double-digit goals, offensive, good in his own end. Sanderson, to me, is a true number one defenseman in the National Hockey League, and his developing into that for Ottawa, another big key. He was supposed to be that. I mean, he was a top 5 pick. So Sanderson becoming this isn't that big a surprise, but it was definitely necessary for the Senators to become a consistent playoff team. And I, not to spoil this, but it's kind of what I think they are going to be. I think Ottawa's going to be a team that I will expect every year to make the playoffs. Now, can they build off last year? By the way, on all those other numbers I mentioned, like we're not really bad at anything. Corsi 4 percentage, so shot attempts 14th in the NHL by percentage. Shot share 13th in the NHL. All the 5-on-5 numbers like right around that middle of the pack, slightly above average. Power play last year they were 12th in the NHL. Penalty kill a little bit lower, 19th. I did mention their save percentage being 7th. So they weren't really bad at anything. Were they elite at anything? Maybe not necessarily, but they got really, really strong goaltending. So I think this is a team that's going to build off that even more. A lot of their young pieces or of their best players are at an age where, like Tim Stuzle at 23 years old, you're going to expect him to be great for years and years and years. Same with Jake Sanderson, who is 22 years old, or Brady Tkachuk at 25, or Shane Pinto at 24, or Ridley Gregg at 22 years old. Ullmark at 31 as a goalie, like he's got 5-6 years left. Is Dylan Cozens worthy of being included in that group, that good young nucleus that Ottawa is presently building around? I think the answer to that question is no. And I'll tell you why I think that when we come back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Today's episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast is presented by Gametime. If you ever decided at the last minute, head to a ball game with friends or family, maybe want to take a quick trip up the QEW, think, hey, I'm off today, little afternoon action. Maybe it's game day, suddenly want to be in the stands. That's exactly where Gametime comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without all the stress. With the money that you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come with you. Gametime makes it possible. Gametime makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually will drop the closer that you get to first pitch, or football games, of course. You want to be out tailgating, season's less than a month away, and maybe you want to go tailgate and hang out by the stadium and check like 10 minutes before kickoff and go, oh, that's a really good price. That happens a lot too. Incredible last minute deals, clear seat views, lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. Gametime, official ticketing partner of Locked On Major League Baseball. Zone deals as well. Again, those seat views make it really clear for you to know what you're going to get. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Sneaky Joe DiBiase back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast, talking about Ottawa today. 97 points last season, and an expectation that I think they will repeat. Now, I don't think the reason they're going to go back to the postseason this year is because of the big trade they made with the Sabres at the deadline, sending Josh Norris to Buffalo for Dylan Cozens. Dylan Cozens showed up there, and if you're locked into hockey Twitter, you probably know Ottawa, I would say, has the second most obnoxious fan base on social media. Obnoxious, delusional. It is so go Sens, go. Like, I like the fan base, and I think the Sabres can be this, and I think there are some other teams I think can be this, that is more objective about certain things versus, hey, anything my team does, I'm waving the flag and I'm gonna argue for it and support it. Like, no, your team's gonna be wrong a lot, and when you think they're wrong, you should call that out. And I don't really sense that from Ottawa fans a ton. But I also don't live on Ottawa Twitter, so I'm sure there are many like that. So Cozens shows up there, and it's like a week where he has a couple good games to start, and it's, oh, they won the trade. Dylan Cozens is going to be a Selke guy, the workhorse from Whitehorse Buffalo. You're a bunch of idiots. He's the next Jack Eichel. He's the next Sam Reinhart. He's the next Ryan O'Reilly, superstar player that left the Sabres. And I thought the whole time, like, all right, settle down. It's been a week. We've been watching this guy play every night, every shift, every minute for 5 years. It is a lot easier to know what makes him tick, and more so when you watch a guy that long, you more and more learn what the player's deficiencies are, that I think it's a lot easier to hide in the first couple weeks with a new team, because your adrenaline is pumping on a new team and everybody's trying to give a little extra effort to make you successful, to make you look good, because you're the new guy and they want to welcome you into the team and, ingrain you in the culture. And I do think that there's that extra high of being on a new team that is all of what I just said that Cozens was riding off of. And yes, for a couple weeks, it looked good. It looked good in Ottawa. He's putting up the points. And at the end of the day, in 21 games, it looks pretty good. 5 goals, 11 assists. It's an 82-game pace of 20 goals, 44 assists, and 64 points. But whenever I watched Cozens in Ottawa, and this included the playoffs, but also at the end of the regular season, I still saw a player that we saw for, I would say, the last 200 games, maybe 150 games that he played for the Buffalo Sabres, which to me was a player that has to play on instinct, has to play fast, has to play a type of game where you don't have to think as much. And when Don Granato got to employ his strategy of go ahead and make mistakes up and down the ice, play fast, play free, play aggressive, Cozens could play more on that instinct and did great doing it. But the moment the Sabres wanted to kind of slow the game down, some players fared better at others, and Cozens was one of those players that did not fare better. The game slowed down, and I think he's a player that does not think the game very quickly. I think the hockey IQ of Dylan Cozens is not quite what it is for a Zach Benson, or it used to be for a Sam Reinhart, some of these extreme examples of guys that I think are at the top of that spectrum. I felt like Cozens was on the other end of that spectrum. There was tunnel vision whenever he would enter the zone and not really know where to go with the puck, even when there was space available to just throw the puck over there because you got a teammate flying in there and you're not seeing that play, ahead of time. You're almost like a quarterback. And Cozens, if he was a quarterback, would have been a quarterback that only threw the ball when his wide receiver was wide open. And I felt like that vision of throwing a guy open or seeing a guy, before he's even open, seeing that play develop ahead of time, that wasn't there. For a center, if you're going to be a winger, you can get away with that. But as a center, it's a lot harder to get away with that. And at the moment, he's still playing center in Ottawa like he was at the end with the Buffalo Sabres. He went a little bit back and forth last season, played a little bit of wing as well. So I still saw those problems. I saw that in the playoffs. I saw that at the end of the regular season in Ottawa. And the numbers do kind of back that up, that while he put up some goals and he put up some points, a little bit of that was inflated by the power play. He scored 3 power play goals in that amount of time that he was in Ottawa. So that's 21 games. And I might not sound like a lot. He had 2 power play goals with the Buffalo. How about 4 power play goals in the previous 140 games with the Buffalo Sabres? So 4 power play goals in 140 games, 3 power play goals in 21 games. He was on a pace of 12 power play goals. His career high is 5 in a season. That's not going to happen over the course of a whole year. And I think that propped up his numbers a little bit. By the way, in addition to that, he also added 5 power play assists in 21 games. He had 7 power play assists, he had 2 power play assists in the previous 61 games for the Sabres. So 2 in 61 games, 5 in 21. 5 on 5. You look at Cozens, and this is to me what is telling about his game and what is incoming. I think there's regression coming off of what he was in Ottawa. I think he's going to look a lot like what he was at the end in Buffalo. Last year, in those 21 games in Ottawa, when he was on the ice, Ottawa scored 44% of the goals. When he was in Buffalo, the Sabres scored 49%. Worse in Ottawa. Shot share. When he was on the ice in Buffalo, 49% of the shots. In Ottawa, 47%. Worse in Ottawa. How about shot attempts? 50.6% in Buffalo, 45% in Ottawa. Worse in Ottawa. Expected goals for percentage was about exactly the same, actually. So, in no category, at 5 on 5, was he actually better in Ottawa than he was in Buffalo. And in fact, you can go back years and you will not find Cozens being better in Ottawa than a season he had in Buffalo, unless you go back to like his rookie season. He, I think, didn't actually have a very good 21 games, but it looked like he did because he put up some power play points. And I'm questioning whether he'll be able to do that again this year. I think Senators fans watching him for a full season will start to learn of the frustrations that we experienced. And that's not even talking about not defending his captain, Rasmus Dahlin, the night before he got traded, which was a criminal offense, I thought. And there are other moments like that, you know, in terms of physicality and stuff that started to go by the wayside towards the end of his Sabre career. All to say, I like Ottawa a lot. I love their young nucleus. I would pick them to make the playoffs. In fact, I want to talk about how far I think they could go this year. But it is not because of Dylan Cozens. If anything, I look at their lineup right now, and I love their top line. I'm looking at a projected lineup right now with Stuzle, Zetterlund, and Tkachuk up top. Love that. I'm looking at, you know, their bottom 6, Pinto and Giroux in the bottom 6 right now. Ridley Gregg and Nick Cozens. They add Lars Eller. They had a very quiet offseason. Lars Eller, and they added a third pair defenseman to Jordan Spence. I like their bottom 6. I love Jake Sanderson. I like their top 4. Thomas Chabot's a good defenseman. I love their goaltending in Linus Ullmark. It's arguable that one of their biggest weaknesses on the entire team is their second line center, Dylan Cozens. That's where I'm at. I really would want to bet against any player that cannot think the game when it slows down to becoming a legitimate top 6 center. And I think that's the fatal flaw of Dylan Cozens. And him overcoming that, to me, is not likely. Now, one last thing on Cozens before we get to their over-under and what I think they're going to do this year. Here's the workout picture. If you are not on social media, maybe you didn't see it. Cozens, there was a tweet from, it's one of the big accounts on Senators Twitter, Laleem's Martian. And back-to-back, you have 2 pictures. Cozens in 2024, last season with the Sabres, and then a photo he posted on Instagram a couple of days ago where he very clearly has put on muscle. Now, even this account points out that you get that swelling on arm day as you're doing it, and it's not really representative of what you actually look like, but I don't think there's any doubt. Even without the swelling, Cozens looks bigger, and Cozens has put on some muscle, and it looks like he's working out more. He's also getting to that age where you start naturally doing that anyway. He'll be 25 during this regular season. So he does look bigger. He does look more physical. Listen, I think that could help him in some ways, but again, my biggest issue with him is how he thinks the game. And you can get those biceps juiced up all you want. It's not going to make you think the game any better. So I didn't necessarily care about that part of the Cozens story this offseason, is him putting on muscle. I think it could help him a little bit in some ways, but not at the thing that he struggles at the most. When we come back, Ottawa's over-under, why I think they're going to top that, and why I think I might be as high on Ottawa this year as anybody. And I'll tell you why when we come back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Today's episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. Hey, maybe if you like how high I am on the Senators, I don't know why you'd want to root for them, but if you wanted to throw a little over under on their point total this year, you could do that. You could check out some of the props on the season. That's still about a month or two away, though. We've got football coming, football futures, college football this week. Season kicks off in Dublin. Can't wait for that. You got a number 1 versus number 3 matchup in week 1. Are you kidding me? So much stuff is coming up. And again, those futures, I love those futures. And August 26th, a week from yesterday, is FanDuel Futures Day. Brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and all those preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel's giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, you're eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment. Obviously, no MVP for here in New York State, but if you're listening outside of New York State, you could check that out as well. Your division dark horse winners you could look at. I like Denver this year in the AFC West. I know. You're betting against Kansas City, you idiot. Like, I love Denver this year. I think their lines are great. I think Bo Nix is going to take another step forward. Really like their defense. I think Denver is ready to finally challenge in the AFC West, and they are looking at some pretty good odds right now. So visit the FanDuel app today. Start planning your futures bets now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only, August 26th. FanDuel, play your game. Sneaky Joe DiBiase back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. We're talking about Ottawa today. No real new Sabres news at the moment, as you would expect for the middle of August. Everybody's pretty much off. Still no Alex Tuch contract, and no rumors or whispers or anything about an Alex Tuch contract. So let's get to the Senators' expectations this year. Clearly, because they made the playoffs last year and they're a young team, I think the expectation is, at a minimum, that you do what you did last year, which is make the playoffs. I believe they will do that. They have an over-under of 94.5 points. And that's lower than what they were last year. I like the over in that situation. I think Ottawa will clear 94.5 points. Now, what about beyond that? How far could they finish in the division? And can they do anything getting to the playoffs? And like once they get there. And I think the answer to that question could be yes on both. In fact, I'd be comfortable predicting right here, right now, that not only will Ottawa finish in the top 3 in the Atlantic Division during the regular season, I feel like I want to pick them to win a round. I want to pick them to win a round. I think you're going to see more growth from those young studs like Stuzle and Sanderson, maybe into superstar level players as opposed to just star level players right now. I think Ullmark is one of the most stabilizing forces in the league between the pipes. And last year they were close to finishing top 3. Part of this too is like Tampa, Florida, there's talk that Matthew Tkachuk might miss most of the year on LTIR. It's the final year the teams can really do that. They missed the top 3 by 1 point last season. Florida finished with 98. The Sens finished with 97. Florida, Tampa, those teams like to, chill out a little bit during the regular season. Just get healthy, stack players on the LTIR, and just get to the playoffs, and we'll figure it out when we get there. Toronto, meanwhile, losing Mitch Marner, I think they could take a step back. So I wouldn't feel comfortable predicting who will drop out, but I could see any of those three teams doing it. Florida more so just because of the LTIR stuff and Tkachuk and, again, them kind of slow playing the regular season. In a playoff series, like if it was Florida, Ottawa, I'd pick Florida in a heartbeat, in 5 probably. But if it was a diminished Toronto team or if it was an old Tampa team, I think Ottawa could win against either one of those 2 teams. And I think the odds of one of the 3 dropping out of the top 3 is pretty good. I think one of those 3 drops out, and the only team I see as being capable of jumping up is Ottawa. So I'd predict them to finish in the top 3. And if it's Tampa or Toronto, I could get to a place where I'm picking them to win a series. I definitely don't think they could beat Florida. I think that's an experienced team at this point. We saw how much of a machine they are in the playoffs. And I would have no expectation that Ottawa can handle Florida. But I do think they can handle Toronto, and I do think they can handle Tampa Bay, especially getting a second go at the Maple Leafs. And if they got, I don't think they'd win the division, but if they did and they got, Washington in round 1 or New Jersey in round 1 or The Sabres in round one, I would certainly pick them to win that division. I would not think they're going to win the division, though. Division's probably going to be like 105 points, 108 points. I could see them getting to 100, but not into the 105 plus area. So I like Ottawa a lot this year. I love their young talent, love their goaltending. And I hate to say all that because I do still I don't have much hatred left in my heart for hockey teams because the Sabres have just sucked the life out of everybody with all of it, rivalries and themselves, and just, it's hard to hate other teams when you're kind of using up all that hate on your own team, right? But as a kid, I hated Ottawa more than any team in sports, and there is still some residual left over from that. So when I see that logo and I see those uniforms, like, it's very easy for me to root against them, but sadly, this year, I think those efforts will probably be futile. I think they're going to be pretty good. Senators at number 4 in our division countdown here. Next up, we are going to talk about the teams that finished in the top 3. Now, we've been going by regular season standings. Doesn't it just kind of feel wrong to do Florida? I think we should skip Florida, even though they only had 98 points. They won the Cup. We should put them last. So we'll do Tampa next. We'll talk about the Lightning, who went 47, 27, and 8, 102 points, and are getting older and older every year. So the Lightning will be our next talk on the Atlantic Division. And again, if there's any Alex Tuck news, we'll bring that to you immediately here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. So stay tuned for that. Should be we'll be coming back on Friday for you with that, and then you've got Locked On NHL. If you're looking for any of our off-season content across the Locked On NHL network, all the greatest local hosts that are, chiming in on what their team did this summer and what's coming up this season, be sure to check it out wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube as well. And we will talk to you on Friday. Hopefully the arena holds together between now and then. Talk to you Friday here in the Locked On Sabres podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.